Hello everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name's Walter, this is Jason, and we're going to be coming to you live from Okemos, Michigan and talking about Camtasia Studio 8.1. We've been kind of overwhelmed with the responses to these webinars. We had original 2 that we had planned, and we had limited those to 500. We thought that was going to be plenty big enough for all the people that wanted to attend, but we actually had to open it up for 2 additional webinars because of all the demand. So we're really honored, and we thank you for tuning in. This is kind of new to us. We're the company that creates a lot of recorded content. We're professionals on how to record content and make it available to people later, but this doing it live sort of thing is a little new to us. So if there's things that you'd like to see from upcoming webinars, if you find this valuable, if you don't find this webinar valuable, we'd like to hear from you. Please email us at webinars@techsmith.com and provide us your feedback, because that will help us as we move forward. Should we have more? What should they cover? Things like that. So thank you very much for tuning in today. We're sorry if you didn't get in on the original webinars. We appreciate you tuning in today. Before we begin, there's a few things I'd like to cover, and just about how this works and how you can give us feedback. And the first thing is there's a chat window right below this video. So as you have questions, please go ahead and ask your questions in that chat widget. We've got some TechSmithians in another room here that are monitoring that chat window. And what they're doing is they're going to pass those along to myself and Jason, and then Jason's going to get an opportunity to answer all of those towards the end. We're going to leave about 15 minutes for questions. We're also going to stay on the chat a little bit longer, so we'll try to answer as many questions, all the questions in the chat window at least, and then as many questions with Jason as we can. The next thing is the actual video itself is kind of small because it's being streamed. We have to kind of shrink it down a little bit, but in the lower right-hand corner, there's the ability to maximize the window. What that will allow you to do is, as Jason starts going through Camtasia Studio, you can maximize it, you can see it as big as you can make it, it'll take up the full screen, and then you can review exactly what he's covering at that point. We are also recording it, so if the quality isn't great enough for you to tell exactly what he's doing, we're recording this. We're going to send you a link later on via email, so you'll be able to review this video in an HD quality video later on to see exactly what it was that Jason had clicked on. So we encourage you to just pay attention, look at what he's doing on the screen today, and you'll have a copy that you can review later on to see exactly how he did it. And we'll also provide, of course, some links that you can review to see how he's performing some of these functions. And then that's really about it. We'll make sure we go through some additional links that you can review for how to accomplish a lot of these things, how to give us feedback. But with that, I'd like to introduce Jason. This is Jason Vlad.
Hi, everybody. As Walter said, I'm Jason Vlad. I am the new product manager here at TechSmith for Camtasia. For those of you who are familiar with TechSmith before, this role was originally filled by Shane Lavellette. Shane is still with TechSmith. He's just moved on to a different solutions management position, and I'm taking the reins and doing all the wonderful things that he did and trying to expand the world of Camtasia. I've been with TechSmith a little over a year, originally joining as part of our education team, and coming into TechSmith, I was a classroom educator, elementary grades, for a little over 6 years. So happy to be here and to share the goodness that is Camtasia.
And my name is Walter Pulowski. I'm a customer solutions engineer here at TechSmith, and that just means that my job is to make you, the customer, happy and try to make all of our solutions work within your environment. So the last thing I think we want to cover is if you have any questions, just make sure you use that chat window. We'll open it up at the end. But with that, let's kick it off. Let's talk about Camtasia Studio 8.1, which came out on June 18th of this year.
Correct. And we just recently did what we call a maintenance release of 8.1.2. That released last Thursday, the 25th of July. And for those of you who already are customers of Camtasia, of TechSmith, any minor releases, which is the majors of the main number, the .1 or .2s, the secondary number, and the maintenance releases, which is the third dot number, so an 8.1.2, all those come included with the original purchase price of Camtasia. So want to keep you up to date as much as possible.
So if you have 8, you get 8.1, you get 8.2. If we had an 8.3, you get all those. And then if you have 7, if you have a version of 7, you can get upgrade pricing. Just contact our sales staff about that. We're going to be specifically focusing in on the features of 8.1 today. So if you're not familiar with 8, we have 30-day free trials, fully functional trials. We encourage you to try those out. And we'll touch on some of those additional features that 8 provided, but we're mostly going to focus on the features of 8.1.
So what I want to talk about here is a little general reasoning behind why video, why you want to become engaged in video with your end users, with your customers, and then we're going to go right into the main things we're going to hit on 8.1 and get right into the demo because frankly it's a lot of fun. So TechSmith has released Camtasia a little over 10 years ago, and we are by far the world leader in screen capture technology. And it is super easy to shoot video and bring it into Camtasia. If you have a smartphone in your pocket, you've got a portable camera, any digital format camera, you shoot that video and import it into Camtasia very easily. Why do you want to do that? Because where your customers are and where your students are, wherever you're trying to share your message, they are consuming video. They are watching it on mobile devices. They're watching it at school, at home. You want to be able to convey your message wherever they are. Wherever they're watching that, you want to be. So the video consumption world is still on the rise. It's relatively new, but still on the rise. And we track metrics on how video is being used in our world. And what we have recently discovered and continue to maintain is that once every 4 seconds, a video is exported and produced from Camtasia and sent to YouTube, which is just one destination for hosting videos. That means roughly 400,000 videos a month come out of Camtasia to be shared in the world of YouTube.
That's a really humbling experience for us to see that once every 4 seconds. That's a lot of content. And you mentioned that you can have video that's coming from your iPhone that you've recorded of yourself, but traditionally Camtasia Studio has been thought of as desktop capture, so doing trainings and things like that.
Absolutely.
So with 8.0, with the release of 8, the ability to bring in live video, shot from a digital camera like the one that we're using here today, is dramatically improved. So you can really, we'll talk about today how you can have both that live video as well as your screen recording to make some really dynamic content.
Absolutely. The more you bring in, the more you're able to make that video interesting to your users, the better off you're going to be. So let me do some quick little tips for your success. So seeing content is even better than just reading it. So putting yourself inside the video, which we can do with our remove color feature, which we will talk about, makes that video more dynamic. It gives a real world feel to it and makes it more interesting, to be quite honest. You can also enhance the overall message of your video by kind of keeping it to, depending on your subject matter, of course, the 3 to 5 minute length of video is usually that sweet spot. As a matter of fact, the tutorials that we have on our website range anywhere from 2 minutes to 5 minutes is maybe the max. It's a small digestible chunk. You can get in, get out, get what you need, and move on. We also have the ability within Camtasia to include quizzing right in the timeline, right in the video, and a series of other different types of interactivity pieces. And what we want to mention is when we talk about any interactivity, including the hotspots and the quizzing, there are only a couple places currently that support that interactivity. One being TechSmith's hosting solution of screencast.com, or if you're going to host the video on your own website, we teach you how to go through and take the package from Camtasia and host it there. Doesn't mean you can't send it to the Vimeos and the YouTubes of the world or Facebook or wherever you're going to send it. It's just you will lose that interactivity. So that's a consideration when you talk about where you're going to have your content live on.
Basically, they take that video and then they convert it. They create their own version of it. And when they do that, they lose the interactivity. So if you use our player, which it's a combination, it's a few different files that get exported. You can put that on your own web server. You can put it on screencast.com. But if you use our player, you'll have that interactivity. If you don't, if it uses something like YouTube, they kind of use their own player and you lose that. So.
There's a group of people here at TechSmith that have a tremendous amount of success in scripting their videos. All of our UA and user assistance people tend to script their videos. They'll walk through the process silently on their computer and record their desktop, record what they're doing, and then they will go back and read a script over what they've done to get that really clear, really crisp, precise video. You can also do it live, as we tend to do more often than not, the down and dirty videos.
It's more important that you get the video done than worry about the ums and ands. It depends on the type of content that you want to get created, but a video is better than no video. And so we can't go back on this webinar and edit out all our mistakes, which we'd like to sometimes, but it's exactly what your audience has seen, so you can capture that sort of content as well. If you want to soup it up, if you want to do the scripted video, definitely more professional, just takes more time.
You definitely have that flexibility. No one's expecting you to be an Academy Award-winning film director, or are they? It depends on your time commitment to what you want to do.
Yeah.
One last thing I want to do before we get into the demo is when you're recording your audio, your spoken word, we highly encourage you to use a USB-based microphone. When I record, and I believe when Walter does his recordings, we just have some real basic headsets with a boom microphone tied into it, plugs right into the USB. We have really consistent, good audio capture. You can use the built-in microphone on your laptop, on your desktop, whatever you have. Just be aware that you'll get the ambient noise. You'll get the...
Not recommended.
Right. You can do it, but go with the USB. You'll be really pleased with the results. So, all right. Demo time?
Let's do it.
All right. So with the release of 8.1 of Camtasia, there's 4 main things that we want to hit today. I'll show you lots of other things, but the 4 main things we want to hit is our increased flexibility of our cropping tool, which is the ability to not only resize, but actually reduce the area of visible media, whether it's a picture, whether it's a video. We also have our stitching method, which is better shown than talked about, but it's basically making your editing so much cleaner, so much faster. We have the ability to take animations that you've created on your timeline, where you've tweaked one just to the point where you want it and you want to copy it and paste it somewhere else in your project. You can do that without reinventing the wheel. Yeah. And then, of course, our...
And animations are super powerful.
Very powerful.
Introduced in Camtasia Studio 8. We'll cover those. We'll show you some of the things you can do, but the sky's the limit when you learn how to use animations.
And last but most certainly not least, the #1 requested feature set for Camtasia Studio, which is our remove a color, also known as chroma key or green screening. So, let's get into it. So I'm going to go ahead and open up Camtasia Studio here. I've got just a brand new project, and within my library I have a ton of the music and themes that are all currently available on our website, techsmith.com. If you go to the Camtasia Studio page, there are free downloadable assets, both still images and animated backgrounds and music to make all kinds of dynamic changes to your video. So what I'd like to do is I'm going to bring in a screen recording that I just did, I don't know, 25 minutes ago, of a shot using Google Earth, my second favorite software behind what Camtasia does for me. And I'm going to add that into my timeline, okay? My recording dimensions, I always go with the automatic up to 720p. It gives me a consistent behavior. It plays on a lot of different devices, a lot of different end results. I'm happy with that. So, Walter, what I've got here is the Google Earth screen. And for those of you who are familiar with Google Earth, the primary focus, if you're not teaching how to use it, if you want to get the end result, you only really want to focus here on the mapping area itself. You don't need all the tools. So what I am going to do, I'm going to manipulate my screen here a little bit. I'm just going to slide down my tracks, my timeline here, so I have a little bit bigger area in the preview window, is I'm going to crop this video down to the area that I want to use. Now, once I crop it, that means I cannot go back to what I had before to be able to see it. And let me show you what I mean by that. Currently, the way the preview window sits, when I have that media selected, if I grab any one of these corners or edge radio buttons, I can actually resize the video, okay? Nothing is lost, everything is still there. I can manipulate it in that fashion. But I don't need all this area. I only need to show what I need to show. So I can do this in one of 2 ways. Up here in the upper right-hand corner, we have our cropping tool, okay? I can toggle the crop mode on and off by clicking it. The buttons grays out, and you have the blue outline, which shows your crop mode is on. And I can turn that on and off as needed, but through a conversation with Dave O'Rourke, our product owner, he's been with TechSmith for a long time and lives and breathes Camtasia, he showed me what is now my second favorite hotkey of all time.
Okay.
The Alt key on your keyboard. If you hold down the Alt key, it also toggles on and off crop mode. Oh. So while I have it depressed here on my keyboard, I have turned crop mode on and off. So I can show that here, on, off, on, off. I love it. Love it.
These are power user features.
Power user features.
So it's great if you love your hotkeys. It's wonderful, but other than that, it's just the button.
It's just the button. And for you, I'm going to use the button. So I'm going to turn on my crop mode, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to change the visible area here and just get down to where we can see the planet Earth. Okay. So once I've done that, I'm going to turn off my crop mode and move the video clip here, my screen recording, and just resize it to where I want it. Now, if you can see on the screen, I'm not sure how it comes through on the webinar, but we have these yellow snap lines. Walter, do you want to talk about those at all?
Yeah, those snap lines were introduced in 8.0, and those are great for aligning things. You can align different pieces of media together. In this case, you've only got the one video, so it's the video on top of the canvas, so it's aligning it to the canvas. So as Jason aligns this here, you can see that it's aligning it top, aligning it centered based on where that yellow line shows up. Just if you've been doing video editing for a while, that can save you a ton of time to make sure that things are all right aligned or left aligned or center justified. It saves you a lot of time because it lets you know when you're dead on.
That small amount of time spent in the editing process reaps tremendous benefits in the professionalism of your end result. So.
Yeah, and I mean, you end up using it all the time. That's what happens.
Absolutely. So what I've done is I've cropped the video down and I've then resized it to where I want, and it was just that simple to turn on and off the cropping mode and to make my adjustments. So what I did was I recorded just the video here of us zooming in from, I'll play it here, from the United States down to good old Michigan where we're located, and then I'm going to zoom us into TechSmith World Headquarters.
Ooh, World Headquarters, very professional.
Thank you. We truly do exist in our entirety in Okemos, Michigan, all the way from where we are in our marketing building all the way to our tech support. All development happens here. So what I'd like to do here is I'd like to show you some of the really awesomeness that is the effect copy and pasting. And what we're going to do is let's take you on a little tour of TechSmith. So I'm going to move ahead in my recording where I got right where I think I want.
Now this, just to interject a second, this is something that a lot of businesses, a lot of schools often need, is you got to send directions to folks. This is a really cool way of being able to send people directions, give them a video example, maybe show them even what door they could walk in. You could have a separate picture of your building and show them which door they can enter into. But this is a nice thing that you're going to need again. A lot of times you need again and again and again. How do you get to our place? You can do this. You can just send them a hyperlink from that point forward, and they can see exactly how to arrive and what building to enter and things like that.
So what I've done is, when I did my screen recording, I did a lot of zooming in and moving around to find out just the right point, and I stopped my recording right where I wanted it. I kind of want that image to stay on the screen, so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to extend that last keyframe. I'm going to take that still image at the very end of my video and extend it out. That is done by just using the hotkey of E, and I can actually create the duration of how much more I want. We'll just say for this period I'm going to use 20 more seconds of still imagery. And what that has done is it has maintained the video still as I play it back, but it's going to take that last keyframe, that last still image, and extend it for me. Okay.
So at any point you can just, I mean, you're taking exactly what's on the screen and you're just extending it for a certain amount of time so that you can continue to talk about it. And you can do that at any moment in the video, essentially create a screenshot of it really, and then extend it for a specific amount of time when you're talking about something. Right?
Absolutely. Okay. So what I've got here on my screen is TechSmith. So what I would like to do is I'd like to draw attention to all of our different buildings. So I am going to go into our callouts menu here.
Now what exactly is a callout?
So a callout is a piece of media that is applied on top of your still image or your video that accentuates a certain part of your screen recording. Okay. It could be something as simple as a rectangular banner with text on top of it. Most often used is these arrows to just draw attention to something. We have all kinds of various shapes, sketch motion callouts. We have the ability to blur the screen, highlight the screen, add text to the screen. You can even, which is really helpful for people that are doing teaching or conveying a certain message, you can actually put on keyboard shortcuts right on your screen. So when I was talking about using the Alt key for doing cropping or the E key for extending out the keyframe, you can actually put that right on your screen so that when you're talking about it, you get a visual representation as well for your end user.
And what's great is as you're recording your screen, if you use any of those hotkeys, Camtasia is automatically recording those, so you don't have to plug them back in and say, oh, I did a Control-C for copy and a Control-V for paste. It just automatically puts them in there because it knew that that's what you hit at that point in time in your video. So that's kind of nice.
Very intuitive, very intuitive. So what I'm going to use today is one of our real basic callouts. In fact, I have one saved in my library, which was just one of our basic wide arrows. And I'm going to drag it down here onto my timeline. Put over here. I'm dragging it to the wrong place. We're going to go ahead and change the method and add it to my timeline right here at the playhead. And
so essentially it's the track above.
The track above, that's correct. Above, yep. So this arrow is comically oversized for the screen I've got right now. So I'm going to resize that arrow, which I can do. I can change its shape, direction, color, all that sorts of stuff. And I'm going to shorten it up here a little bit. And what I've got is I am pointing to our marketing building where we actually are recording this webinar right now. So let's go ahead and take our timeline and zoom in on the timeline. And what that's doing is it's not manipulating the project in any way. It's just allowing me to see very detailed parts of the time of my timeline. I have my arrow here. And what I'd like to do is I'm going to have it naturally fades in and fades out. For the time that we're using it, I'm actually going to shorten the fade in period. I'm going to drop it down to, let's say about 1/4 of a second, which, so we got 0.23, and I'm going to have the fade out at the same point. And I can actually change that value right here rather than using the slider. So now when the arrow comes in, the call out comes in, it fades in, it currently does nothing, and it fades out. Well, what I want to do is I want to have an animation where the arrow actually follows the buildings in TechSmith so that I can talk about them individually. So I'm going to have it start here at our marketing building. And then what I think I'd like to have it do is I'd like to have it walk around here to our sales building. Okay. What I can do there is I can come over to my More tab and create a visual property and add an animation. So if you're a menu person, simply can click on animation and it'll drop an animation on the media, which in this case was the callout that I have highlighted. Or if you're a hotkey person, you can use the hotkey of the letter Z and it will drop it right in. So let's...
So it's adding it to that item right now because you have it highlighted on the...
Correct.
Okay.
Yep, so any animation that I apply to our project at this point is only going to affect that callout because that's the only media I have selected. So let's add an animation. And what has happened is it has dropped an animation here right onto my callout media, right on the timeline here. And what I can do at this point is I can tell Camtasia what I want it to do. The animation starts here at the tail of the arrow, and wherever you have the playhead, when it hits the end of this callout arrow, the callout animation, that's how I can tell where I want the callout to end up. Okay. So in this case, I'm going to actually move my callout over here to the sales building, and I'm going to rotate it so that it is pointing right to the building I want to talk about. In this case, my arrow is kind of off the screen, but I'm okay with that for right now. Okay. So I double-click the end of the animation arrow to make sure that Camtasia knew that's where I want this end result to be. So if I drag my playhead and I scrub it back over and play the video, I can have it zoom in and move right over to that sales building. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to, just to give us a little space, I'm going to move the animation start, the actual call out over a little bit. Yeah,
have it stay on the screen on that first building for just a second longer.
Yep. So what I can do is just extend the call out. There we go. So that it starts here, and it's going to go ahead and play, and then move over the animation to the sales building.
That's nice.
It's pretty smooth movement. I don't want to recreate that. So this is where an update to 8.1 comes in real handy. I can actually right-click right on the animation on my callout, and I can copy it. That means it's going to take all the animation movement that I had just done, and I can paste it in another place in my timeline by right-clicking and clicking paste. So I have that exact same duration of time applied somewhere else in the video. So in this case, I'm going to have it move from, I'm going to click on the end of my animation so I can tell Camtasia where to end the animation. I'm going to have it point over here. Oh, I've resized thing. And I'm going to have it actually point right at the engineering building here. So now when I scrub back across, I have it stopping at the sales building for a brief second, because this is a very short recording, and then over to our engineering building. So let's see what that looks like in playing mode. Sales, engineering, nice.
That is nice, yeah.
2 more buildings to go, so we'll do another quick paste. And this time I want it to end up pointing at our Coach's Eye and Tech Support building, but this time I'm going to kind of have it spin around a little bit. So I'm adding an animation, I'm adding a property to that actual animation so that it knows that during that time it's going to do the movement for me.
Now you just did that manually, but if you look on the left-hand side there under rotation, what he essentially was doing is as he spun that Z-axis was just increasing. So to be really precise, I tend to use the left-hand side, and I just say, well, I'm going to spin it 360 degrees or 720 degrees, or I want to change the position, and you can change it pixel by pixel with that X and Y coordinate values over there. But you could also do it the way Jason did it, where you've got it selected, and then you can just use that the rotation axis and spin it yourself. So it's pretty nice that the ability to do animations, you've got a lot of different control by using that that selection area on the left-hand side of the Camtasia Studio.
Correct. So I accidentally added another animation, but that's okay. I can simply click on it and delete. So our motion now goes from our marketing building to our sales building to the engineering building and over to the Coach's Eye building.
Nice.
And I can do this ad nauseum.
Now, what's also really great about this is you're using this just on a call out right now, just on an arrow.
Yep.
But you can do this on anything, right? If you wanted to, let's add a quick animation after that arrow flies off. Maybe add a quick animation to the actual video,
sure,
or the actual image in this case, because you've kind of extended the frame for the Google Earth.
Sure.
If you wanted that to fly off the screen, you could also do that, correct?
Correct. So let's do this. Let's adjust the call out to fade out right after it gets to that building. Okay. So it's going to show up and it's going to fade out. Now to add an animation to the actual recording, I want to make sure that I clicked that media, that recording itself. Okay. So I'm off the call out now and it's actually on here. So at this point I could add an animation either by going to the visual properties or using that hotkey of Z. And we've added an animation here to our screen recording. And what do you want it to do, Walter? What do you feel?
How about it's going to zoom off to the upper right-hand side and maybe become transparent as it does so.
Okay. So we're going to have it kind of fly off up here into the corner.
Yep.
So what I can do is since I'm at the end of the actual animation here, which I've double-clicked on to get to the end of, we're going to change the opacity from 100% over here on the scale down to 0. Which is going to have it fade out for us. We're also going to have it move off and to the right. So I can actually grab that recording and just slide it up and off of, I'm going to zoom out of my preview window here a little bit so I can see more of my operational canvas. Yep. And I'm just going to have it pull off to the outside of the viewable area of the screen. Right.
So let's start it at the beginning of the arrows. Let's see the total effect at the beginning of the arrows to that point.
All right, so I've moved it before my call out animations. I'm going to click play. Let's zoom back in so we can see the whole preview there, and we'll click play. So our arrows come in, they move around, and goodbye to the Google Earth recording.
There we go. So with those animations, once again, that was introduced in 8.0, and you've got all kinds of control. And this is one of those areas where we really rely on our customers to tell us how they're going to use this. We've seen some really, really neat, engaging videos using these animation keyframes, and really the sky's the limit. You could take videos, you can bring them all in together, you can rotate them in, you can fade them in, you can resize them, you can have a small video take up the whole screen and shrink back down. There's lots of different control that you can do here, and we just encourage you to play around with it, to try it out, and to come up with different effects. But now with this ability to copy and paste the animation, you can use those animations again and again in your videos, which is really nice.
It's really helpful, especially if you're moving things around and you want that exact movement. You've got it. So,
a quick reminder, we do have that chat window below, so if you're just now joining us, ask your questions in the chat window. We'll try to get to as many of those at the end as we can.
okay. So we've talked about cropping, and we've talked about the ability to copy and paste effects. What I'd like to talk about now is stitching. Okay. And what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to start a new project because I want a clean slate, clean start. I'm not going to save this one because we'll recreate it another time if we want.
You did it quickly.
Yeah, this is true. So what I'm going to bring in here is, this is a recording that we did with our digital cameras here in the studio, which is great for us, but you don't need to use a fancy digital camera like we have. And what this is a recording of Paul Midland, one of our architects here at TechSmith, wielding a lightsaber.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're computer nerds, so you knew that Star Wars had to be part of the picture at some point.
Absolutely. And what we've got him over is one of our green screens, which we'll talk about in a second. But I want to show you the stitching capability using this clip. Okay. This is a very long clip. It's about 3 minutes and 28 seconds here. And it starts with Paul playing, in essence, with his lightsaber in front of a green screen. Yeah, there's Paul being Paul. Really hope he doesn't see me using this. No, he's totally comfortable with it. And at the very end of the video,
that's a great place to pause it.
Oh yeah. At the very end, we have Paul also demonstrating his fabulous lightsaber skills in front of a blue screen. Okay. I don't need all that stuff in the middle. I just don't. Don't get me wrong, I love Paul, but I just don't need him all the time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find a point in my media, right in my recording, where I think I've got enough of the green screen. I think that's good. Okay. And I want to take out that whole middle section where the lights turn off and all that. Yep. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually take our playhead where there's the green and red, and I'm actually going to drag the red section and create an area of the recording where I want to get rid of. So right now I have a selected area of the media, single recording, and I'm going to cut it out. Okay. Easiest way to do it is to just hit this little scissors button here. That's our cut button. And what's going to happen, I'm going to describe what's going to happen. It's going to take out that part of the recording, and it's going to take this part of the recording at the beginning, the green screen, and this part of the recording at the end, the blue screen, and it's actually going to pull them together and stitch them and make them one recording, one piece of media on the track. So we click cut, and just like that, it pulled that section out. Yep. And it created what originally would have been two pieces of media, two recordings, and made it one. So let's move the playhead off because it actually dropped it right where those two pieces were merged together. And we're going to zoom in a little bit. And right here is where you see where those two recordings were stitched together. So what does that mean? It means that any change, any manipulation I do to this recording, it's going to act as a singular recording. That is different than if we make a split to create two separate recordings, which I can show you right now. If I wanted to create a split on the media and be done with this part of the video, so to speak, I could go to our edit window, edit menu, and click S, or for split. I can also use the hotkey of S. Once I create a split, that has actually created two separate recordings. Okay. Where here the stitched pieces stay together, these are actually going to behave differently. If I do an animation, it's going to stop right at the end of that recording and not carry over. If I do an animation here...
Can you show what that looks like?
Yeah, absolutely.
What does that mean, really?
So let's do this. Let's add an animation to this side. We'll just have him...
maybe a zoom or something.
In. Yeah. So we're going to go ahead and do the zoom in. And we're going to add a zoom animation by adjusting the window here. We'll zoom in on the center of his sweatshirt there. And we're going to actually elongate the animation, and I actually can't drag it any further past that split mode. So it sees the split as a stopping point.
Okay, so if you were to play that back.
So if I play this back, what's going to happen is it's going to zoom in, and then immediately jump back. And it
jumps right back out because it's a different...
Right, it's a fragmented recording. It's two separate recordings. If I take that same zoom and I drag it back here over our stitched area, okay. And for a more dramatic effect, I'm actually going to zoom in a little further. So I want to make it an obvious zoom here. So we'll zoom right in on his word love there on his sweatshirt. So we're doing that same animation. The only thing I changed was I just zoomed it in a little further.
Yep.
And I actually have it spanning that stitch.
Okay.
If I hit play, it doesn't jump at all. It goes right into the zoom position.
So essentially when you're stitching it together, it's treating it like it's the same video, even though you really just cut out a huge portion in between. I mean, there's value sometimes in having them be separate, right? But there's, in a lot of cases, when people were doing cuts especially, they wanted that cut, they wanted it to act like it was never there, right? Essentially, you're acting like it's that one recording, but it was never really there in the first place. And this is, that stitching kind of allows you to do that. So it does it automatically on the cut. What if those two pieces of media that you just did, what if I wanted to stitch those together later on? Can you do that?
Sure. So all I'd have to do is hover my mouse right over where the split was made, and it actually highlights that little space. All I need to do at this point is I can right-click on that area, and the very top choice is the stitching area. So I can actually click Stitch Media, and that has now created a stitch. So that split I made before, it's right back to being a singular piece of media.
And if you ever make a mistake, like let's say you just did a split and you didn't mean to, oh my gosh, I hit S, I didn't mean to hit S. Control Z, or the little arrow button there. Control Z is your friend. We have unlimited undos. So sometimes I try different effects. I go down this rabbit hole of, maybe I want it to look like this. I play it back and that looks like garbage. I don't like that at all. And then just Control Z, Control Z, Control Z until I get back to the point where I was happy with all that stuff before I started.
Right. It definitely allows for the freedom to
play around, experiment.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Absolutely. I agree. So stitching really helpful. The differences between the two, where I would use a split as opposed to a stitch, is if I wanted to separate that recording and drop something in the middle, a split's going to work tremendously for me. Stitching has saved my tail many a times where I've made that perfect animation only to have it hit the wall originally. Stitching solves that problem for me.
Excellent.
Walter, we've covered cropping.
Yep.
Walter, we have covered the copy and effect and paste it somewhere else in your recording. Yep. We have also talked a little bit about stitching here. I think it's time to talk about our remove a color.
The big feature, the feature that everybody's been asking for.
Absolutely. And I'm actually going to show it two different ways for our webinar today. Because I have Paul's blue screen and his green screen here. Okay. And we've got that switching right at the stitch. So that's a dramatic jump, but it's there for us. Yep. So let's talk about green screen really quick. We call it remove a color, chroma key, it's all the same thing. When we shoot here at TechSmith, we have a couple different green screens, but this is the one we use most often. This is a real basic fabric green screen. It's collapsible. It has the blue on the other side, as Walter's showing you here. So the reason the green screens and blue screens exist is it's easy to remove the color out with a human subject and other subjects because it's the farthest diversion from skin tones. Yeah. So we use this one. It cost us maybe around $100. It's by far not the top end, and it's absolutely not the entry level, which you can get the range of them. And most online retailers, if you do a search, you can find green screens. We find this one to be very effective for us because of the lack of creases and folds, any of the wrinkles that create shadows. Yeah. When you shoot against a green screen, which doesn't even have to be this, it could be a solid color wall in your office or wherever you're shooting.
It could be a sheet.
It could be a sheet, which I have done that before pretty successfully. Recommendation, you want to make sure that you place lights that are directed against the green screen itself and then lights against your subject. And if you can create some space between you and the green screen so that you're not casting a shadow. Right now, you can kind of see the arm shadow that's there. And we'll show you in this recording of Paul why that's challenging. So
the more shadows, the more creases, even that's going to affect your ability to remove this color later on. Yep. And obviously, you don't want to wear whatever color this is. So if it's green, you don't want to wear a bright green shirt. If it's blue and you have blue eyes and you remove the blue, you're going to see through the person's head. You know, maybe that's the effect that you want, But just keep those things in mind as you go to remove that color to make sure that it's not visible on the person.
Those intro film school horror movies that
Yeah.
everyone does? Yeah. Okay, so let's take a look at my screen here. We have our friend Paul. Paul was shot against this exact green screen. It was put in a horizontal position. So we can actually see up here in the right-hand side, part of the screen we don't need. So I'm actually going to lean on that cropping tool we talked about earlier today, and I'm just going to crop that part out. And then reposition Paul so he's centered on my screen. There we go. Paul's ready to go. So this is an example of what would happen if you shot against a green screen and didn't have really good lighting. You didn't kind of experiment. This will be okay, but it won't be primo for you. What we're going to do is we're going to go into our Visual Properties tab. And at the very bottom of the visual effects, there's a very unassuming button that says Remove a Color. Yep. This is probably one of the more powerful clicks that you can do in Camtasia. We click on Remove a Color, and we're provided with several options. Bottom line, the easiest thing for you to do is once you click on Remove a Color, you click on the drop-down menu of Color, and you come down here to the Select a Color option. What that's going to do when I click on it is it's going to change my cursor into this eyedropper. And all I need to do with the eyedropper is come around to where I want the color removed. Now, as I move around the screen here, these values, the R, G, and B, the red, green, and blue values change. So I want to find where I see the most consistent color. This is looking pretty good up in this corner.
Yep.
As soon as I click on it, that green is gone. It actually, for being a rough lighting job, it turned out pretty good.
Yeah, it looks pretty good.
And even though the lighting wasn't the best, we still have the ability here with our sliders to kind of adjust the way it looks. These are definitely within your range of the experimentation Walter was speaking about before. Yeah. I tend to bump up the tolerance a little bit, and as you can see, it removes that little bit of the halo effect around Paul.
There's a really great help video. I mean, tolerance, softness, hue, defringe, yeah. Those are kind of, some of those are technical terms.
Fancy terms.
But there's a great video by one of our instructional designers, Josh Holnagel, that explains exactly, you know, his experiences and the things that you want to tweak in order to get the best color removal behind a subject. Mm-hmm.
So what I've done is I've effectively removed the color behind Paul, so if I play the video, the only thing we should be able to see is Paul and his wonderful lightsaber skills.
Now, why is that black? Sometimes we get the question, why is it black behind there? Can I change that? Why is that the color?
Mm-hmm. So let's go ahead and pull the remove a color off for just a second. Yep. The recording we've got here is Paul against the green screen. Behind Paul, if we move him over, is just our editing background. You can actually manipulate that to be whatever you want. In fact, if using the black background is really helpful for adjusting those sliders to kind of make sure your subject looks good. But if you ever want to change it, it's really simple. You either have the option right at the beginning when you pick your editing dimensions to change the background color, or you can do it within the middle of your project. Right here in the editing dimensions button here in the top left-hand corner of the preview window, if you click on that, you actually have the background color check choice button here. If I wanted Paul to be behind a red background, I could choose red, and it won't affect anything until I remove that green color from behind Paul on the recording, which is on top of the canvas.
Okay.
I've already applied it, so all I have to do is recheck it, and now Paul is in front of a red background. For those of you who are fans of this genre, you know that the story did not take place in front of a red inferno. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually I'm going to move my timeline up a little bit so I can have a little bit more workspace. I'm going to move Paul's recording up one track to track number 2 here. And what that means is anything Paul is layered on top of is what we'll see behind him. So I'm going to go into my my library here, and I have a couple of choices.
So this is a new thing for Camtasia Studio 8, kind of unlimited tracks. You can have as many tracks as you want. And the tracks that are higher up are going to be the tracks that are more in the foreground.
Correct. So it's definitely a layered effect. The higher the track is on your timeline setup, the utmost of the layers you will look down upon them. So if I pull in, let's move our playhead back to the beginning, and I right-click on the stars. I'm going to add this to my playhead, and it adds it to track 3. So that right now is obscuring Paul because it's a higher track. Yep. I'm going to pull him down, the stars, down to track 1. And since it's just a still image, just a picture, I'm going to extend it here so that once we bring Paul over, and we'll resize the recording so that we don't see our background. The stars there. We'll extend the stars out so we cover up our red background.
Gotcha. So that image, that's just a static image. That's something that you
I pulled it off of the free and fair use off Google image search.
Okay, so you grabbed a static image. So now it's Paul in front of stars.
Now it's Paul in front of stars. So when he shows us his skill set, it's in an appropriate
there you go.
venue. Go, Paul.
Definitely dressed like a Jedi Knight.
Absolutely.
For sure.
Absolutely.
Now, that's one example. Like, what is a real good practical example of how somebody might be able to use this in their videos?
So the way you would see it in your daily life is what Walter refers to as the weatherman effect, where you're putting yourself inside your media and calling attention to something specific on your screen. In our world, where we're either teaching or selling something or conveying a message to your customers, a lot of people use this for their call to actions. They kind of mix it up or blend it together with hotkeys or hotspots on their screen.
Yeah.
So if I'm standing here against my green screen and I'm off to the left of the recording, I can actually have buttons on my screen that I can point to. I can actually look like I'm clicking on them. I can do a lot of fun things so that you're actually calling something out for your viewers to do. It's a tremendous use of that. It's a great one to, if you're a teacher and you want your students to be in a specific time frame where they're doing historically accurate representation, they could do that. They can find still images or videos from recreations and put themselves right involved in there. If we wanted to do this whole webinar while riding a roller coaster, we could probably do that if we wanted to shoot it on the green screen.
So when you're talking about a piece of, you're talking about a specific subject. If it's Gettysburg, you could have Gettysburg in the background. You could have either the students dress up or you dress up and introduce. We're going to be talking about Gettysburg, and maybe call attention to something. Maybe with an animation, move yourself off the screen and then show a video or bring in other types of media. It just allows for a lot more engaging piece of content, because now you're literally part of the content. You're part of the video.
And the background behind a remove a colored piece of recording like this doesn't have to be a still image. It can be a moving video. We actually have some animated backgrounds that are part of the theme set for Camtasia. So if I actually went down here to my timeline and deleted that star picture, I can actually add an animated title to my project here. And of course it drops it into track 3 because it wants to do the next editing. So I'm going to drag it down here behind Paul. And in this case, our animated titles are grouped together where it has both an animated background and a text call out. In this case, I don't need the text call out, so I'm going to go ahead and click on it.
So that's what's called a group. So you're just expanding the group and you're removing a part of that group. So.
Right. Grouping is the way that you can take a series of pieces of media, recordings, videos, pictures, call-outs, all the things that you've done, and put them all together so you have them in a package that you can reuse over and over. But now if we put Paul over this animation, we've got the video playing in the background and Paul video playing in the foreground.
That's great.
It's awesome.
That's great.
And I can manipulate
So that
Paul.
could be any video you want.
Any
happen
video.
in the background.
Yep.
Okay. And
I could add an animation to Paul, like Walter was saying. I can have him fly off. I can have him fade out. I can have him spin around. I can make him sick to his stomach. I can do a lot of stuff. So that is the 4 big pieces of Camtasia 8.1. There's a ton more to go through, but we have only so much time. So at this point, we want to kind of share a couple pieces of information and then get to some questions.
All right. Well, before we start with the questions, let's cover where people can go online to get to find out more information about how to perform some of these features, to how to give us feedback. Let's talk about some of those places.
Sure. So if you hop on your favorite internet browser and go to www.techsmith.com, you have the ability, if you don't already have the Camtasia Studio, you can actually download it here, and like Walter said, we offer 30-day free trials, full functioning. If it's in the product, you can do it with our trial. If you want to learn a little bit more about how to do some of the things we talked about today, you can, of course, rewatch this webinar, or you can come right up here to the top to our support page. One of the first options you have here is tutorials. If we click on tutorials, we have all of our products listed. We're going to go to Camtasia Studio here to our tutorials, and we have a whole series of both written and video tutorials to walk you through a lot of these processes.
And we use our own software to create these tutorials, and something that Jason had brought up, maybe animations in depth.
Sure, so we click on animations in depth here.
So if we look at animations in depth, on the lower right-hand corner here is you have the ability to actually download the project. This is really great because you can see exactly how that project was made using Camtasia Studio. So after you watch the video, you're thinking, wow, I would like to do that one effect that was done by our instructional designer. You can download it and you can bring it right on your canvas and see exactly how it was performed. So we use our own software to create these. They're great. It's a great learning experience to understand the different functions and features of the products.
Absolutely. And not only can you look at tutorials to learn how to use our product, we also like to hear from our end users. In fact, a lot of what we do is based on your feedback. So under that same support tab here at the top, we have both our community support, which is our Get Satisfaction page. If you click on that, you have the ability to search through questions people have asked, or maybe there's a feature request that people have. Like, I really wish Camtasia Studio could do remove a color, green screen.
That was asked for a lot. So feedback.techsmith.com, submit those. The developers are on it. Jason is on it. So as you have feedback for us, use this venue to go ahead and either thumb up some other things that people are suggesting, give them a +1, or share your own ideas.
Absolutely. And also on that page, we have our tech support. And tech support is located where, Walter?
Just in another building. You pointed to it.
It's literally across the street from where we are. The guys and gals over there are ready to work through your problems with you and make sure that you're as successful as you can be.
Great. All right, well, let's get to these questions. We are running a little bit short on time for the questions, but I want to make sure we get to quite a few. So we're going to run a little bit over an hour, and I hope that's okay for you. If you need to leave early, that's fine. We'll send you a recording, link to the recording after we're done. So if you need to sign off right at noon Eastern, that's fine. But we have a question from Rick. He asks, how do you animate a box or a circle to surround a point of interest in Camtasia Studio? So there's something I want to call attention to. We showed you how you can move that arrow around, but what happens if I want to maybe make a circle and animate something around what it is that I'm trying to show to my audience?
Sure. So let's go ahead and pull that Google Earth footage back up.
Okay.
And let's say I wanted to start a new project here, so I want to make sure I pick my editing dimensions. And let's say I wanted to call attention to the TechSmith buildings. I can bring my playhead to where I want that animation to take place. And I'm going to extend out here because we're in the same position where we want to add a little bit more still imagery. And what we've got here is the area of our campus that we want to bring our attention to. So let's go to our callouts. And you wanted to bring a square or a circle, you said?
Yeah, circle.
Let's go ahead and use our sketch motion callout circle, one of my favorites. I'm going to go ahead and select that one and right-click and, oh, you know why it's doing that, Walter? I have not chosen any recording or media to apply it to.
There we go.
So I'm going to go ahead and grab the recording that we want to apply that to, and we're going to drop down and add the sketch motion callout by adding the callout here. And we've got the arrow selected. Let's go ahead and grab that sketch motion callout. So if I wanted to have it actually go over and show up around this area, I can have it fade in right at that point. I don't have to have it move in or fly in or anything like that. I can actually have it just arrive in our recording with the zoom in, and that applies the accentuating point that he was talking about. It popped in. I can have it last as long as I want. I can have it zoom in and zoom out. I can have it fade in, fade out. You have the control over that call out at that point.
So in this case, that particular sketch motion call out, it's literally drawing it on the screen. It's sketching it on the screen and showing you exactly what's going on. You're gonna draw right around that area. So that sketch motion call out is a great way to highlight what's going on the screen at that point. And there's a few. There's the square. There's a check mark, an X.
Yep. And then you have the translucent and transparent already shaped things, the ovals, and you can have them fade in and out. You can do the same thing with text. You can actually have text fade in and out if you want to. It doesn't have to be a specific shape or call out.
And you can actually use your own call outs. You can bring in your own image if you wanted to and use that as a call out. So don't feel like you're limited to just ours. You can use another piece of media as well in order to do that.
Absolutely.
Thank you for the question, Rick. There's a question from a guest. Is there a list available for the size to record based on what your screen recording is? So if it's a website, is it small text versus what it will be displayed through? So YouTube and HD display. So they're basically, I think the question is, if I can summarize it, is how do I decide what resolution to record at, and then based on where it's going to? And I think the answer for that is, you want to keep in mind where you're going to share this video. So is this video that you're creating, is this content that you're creating going to be optimized for a mobile device like an iPhone? If it's going to be optimized for an iPhone, there's a certain amount of screen resolution that you have here. It's a lot smaller than, say, your desktop. So what will happen is you either want to start with a smaller recording, if that's the case, or you want to do more zooms. You want to do more zooms, so if you're showing your desktop, you can see the full desktop, but then you zoom in so that it's a one-to-one, so people can really see on a small device what it is that you're highlighting. So ultimately, even for the same recording, if you want it to go out to different outputs, you might have to do some different edits for those different outputs. Ideally, you record in the same resolution that you're going to go out to. So if I know that I'm going to create say a 720p video, that means 720 pixels, I would record with 720. So that way I don't have to, every time you shrink things down, you lose quality. That's basically what we're saying there. And if you're recording a big desktop, if you're recording your entire desktop, sometimes what we actually do here is we change our resolution before we do recordings. But we've got some great tutorials about that online.
We do.
If you have any other questions about that, please feel free to contact our tech support, and we can dig into that in more detail. So, thank you very much for that question. A question from another guest in regards to resolution. The visual space that this person wants to record is 1280 by 1024. What is the largest playback size? And for playback size, there really isn't a limitation for playback size. The big thing is you really don't have control over the size that your person's playing it back in. So if they're on a smaller display and you're trying to fit in a bigger recording, it's not going to be the best user experience. Our output, if you use our standard output, we do our best to just automatically kind of shrink it down to fit whatever their browser is at that point. But it depends. I mean, you have to use our player in that case. You can also just export a raw video. But ultimately, you don't have control over that the size of their playback device. Not usually. I mean, maybe if it's in a, in a conference room or something, you got your own TV, then that's fine.
Yep.
But what I try to do is I try to strike a balance there. That's a pretty high resolution. So that's not the best for all your users, usually a really high-res video like that. YouTube, if you haven't seen it, and if you can go to YouTube just for a second, they automatically size things for you. So if you send stuff out to YouTube, by default, you get a smaller version, what's called like 360p, and then you can actually change. And then here we'll go to the TechSmith page. So if you haven't seen our TechSmith YouTube page, we encourage you to check this out.
Lots of cool videos.
Got a lot of videos from our customers showing how they use our software. So this can be great to get an idea of how other people have used it. But when you click on one of these videos and you play it back, there's that little gears icon on the lower right-hand corner here. And that gears icon, by default, it starts off with a lower quality. But if you upload the highest quality, then your users can at least get to it. They can kind of self-select what video quality they want. So that's an option. Thank you very much for that question. This question from Joe is, can you go over what you said about taking the YouTube and Vimeo videos and embedding them into a website? In other words, avoiding using YouTube and Vimeo. So it's not, you're not really avoiding using them, but so what is
talking about
embedding?
The interactivity? Is that what he's talking about?
Well, I think he's saying embedding them into a website. So YouTube and Vimeo, and then embedding into a website. So I'm not sure if he's talking about taking the embed code from YouTube and Vimeo, or if you just wanted to put them on a website directly, like you wanted to host them on a website.
So let's do a real simple one here. I have a 33-second video that I recorded the other day of just typing into Google search. Let's pretend that I have completed my recording. Yep. My project's done. When I go to produce and share here, I actually have the ability to share to screencast.com, share to YouTube, share to Camtasia Relay, which is another one of our products. But if he wants to send it somewhere else, what he can actually do is just click on the produce and share, and within the drop-down menu, we can actually have him choose just the MP4, just the file he needs. So I'm going to grab the HD version in this case, the MP4 up to 720p. I'm going to click Next. I'm going to name it Demo. And right now I have it being saved to my desktop. So I'll click Finish, and it's going to go ahead and render and produce that project out. And when it's done, I'm going to get a folder on our desktop that will show you. And inside that folder is the MP4, the completed project, the whole recording, everything's all ready to go.
Yep.
And you can take that MP4 and put it on your hosting site, whether it's your own wiki, it's your own blog, you can embed it right in that way. If you were to have any interactivity, there's a few more steps involved in that, and we actually have that called out on our
There's essentially more files. If you want the interactivity, there's more files that you would upload to your web server in order to host it.
So I went ahead and produced that video. Right here on my desktop is that demo folder that we were talking about, and inside that folder is the demo MP4 ready to place wherever you want.
Yep. Now, if once again, if Jason exported the entire project with not just the video, but if it had interactive features, there'd be an HTML page, there'd be a few things. You can upload those to a web server. If you don't have a web server, if you don't have your own hosting space, uploading it to YouTube, uploading to Vimeo is a great place to do that. And there is this stuff called embed code. If you go back to YouTube for a second, there is this stuff called embed code where you can take that video, and if you click on this share option and click embed, I can take that code. There's a code listed on the screen. You can copy that, and then you could paste it into your website and have it kind of appear like it's being hosted on your website, even though it's actually being hosted by YouTube or Vimeo.
Yep. And you can manipulate this as you want, starting points, whether or not you want ads, all the things all controlled within there.
You can do that same sort of thing with screencast.com. If you're using ours, you just get that embed code, and then you can act like essentially have it show up on your website so they never leave your blog or your web page, and have it be hosted on screencast.com as well. A question from this guest is, can I specify what track a cut segment is pasted on? Sometimes a pasted segment goes on a high-level track. So when you go to paste something, is it always going to go on the highest level track, or can you specify what track it's going to be pasted on?
That's a tremendous question. I believe it always goes to the highest track. We really want to make sure that that media, the recording, whatever portion that you want to manipulate, is specifically put somewhere where you can see it.
Yeah.
And because it's easy to drag and move around, I could be, in a situation where I've got 50 tracks going.
Yeah.
I know every time. I don't have to guess where it's going to be. It's always going to go on the next highest track. It'll always create a new track. Whether or not it can be put on a specific track, I'm not sure. That's a great question.
I think when you paste it, it always goes to the highest track exactly because of what Jason just mentioned. We wouldn't want to paste something and then have you not see it because it's below something else. So it's just a matter of once you paste it there, you can drag it down and put it wherever you'd like. But I think if you go towards the end, if you said you went to the end here on track 3 or something, and you go ahead and paste that, then it will go, as long as there's nothing else below it, it will go to that lowest track. So if you're pasting it, if you watch what Jason just did there, it's going to go, if there's anything below it, it's going to paste it to the next highest track. But if there's nothing else on the timeline at that point, it'll drop it all the way to the bottom, the lowest available track, essentially. Yep. Great question, though. Made us think. You're making us think today.
Love that. Love it.
Curveballs, we love it. Question from Lloyd, is there a quick way to zoom in and then reverse the zoom back to full screen?
Yeah, actually there is. So let's go ahead and remove all these pastes that we just did. If I wanted to zoom in on my screen here on my recording, I could apply a zoom and pan effect here. So I'm going to go ahead and zoom in on just the typing area, I think, up here on the left. So I'm adding this zoom feature in so that it zooms in from the main screen right into where I'm typing. And let's say at this point I want to go back out to that full screen. There's actually a preset button right here where I can select the scale the media to the entire canvas, or I can go back to the the screen, the full canvas. It's going to pull right back to where the original settings were. And when I clicked on that, it applied an animation to my timeline. So when I play that video back, I have my zoom, and then I have it pulling right back to the full screen.
Great.
Yep.
And you're able to do that really quickly.
Yeah.
That's excellent.
Real easy. Preset buttons are awesome.
All right, well, we've gotten through all the questions that were on hold for us. If you have any additional questions, we've got the Techsmithians in the other room that will be happy to answer those, and we'll stick on that in that chat window for a little while afterwards. So if you have questions, please continue to ask those. But at this point, I'd like to thank you, Jason.
Thank you, Walter. Appreciate the opportunity.
Showing us the demo there, and we appreciate all of you for tuning in today. We also have a lot of people that have contributed here at TechSmith for these webinars. We want to thank our videographers, Mike and Kyle, for all those that helped out in the chat window. That's Matt, Jesse, Lars, Sarah, Daniel, Stephen, and Caitlin. And if you guys have any feedback for us, we'd love to hear it. Please send us your feedback at webinars@techsmith.com. We'd like to do some more of these, but we want to make sure that they're valuable to you. So please send us your feedback. Let us know what worked, what didn't work. If you liked what you saw today, you can purchase this software by going to store.techsmith.com. Jason's got it up right now. Mm-hmm. We have volume discounts, so if anything more than 5 licenses, you can start decreasing the overall cost with volume discounts. We do bulk level pricing. We do education pricing. If you on the right-hand side, there's a link. If you're an educator, you can get education pricing. We do site licenses. We'd encourage you to check that out. Once again, check out our Learning Center. You can go to, at the very top there, the support link, and then training. We've got feedback.techsmith.com and our TechSmith YouTube page. If you want to see how other customers are using our software, how they're reaping some benefits from it, we encourage you to check that out. Mm-hmm. Thank you very much for tuning in today. It's been a pleasure providing this webinar to you. We hope you found it valuable. My name is Walter. This is Jason. We hope to see you again. Thank you.